What is going on, guys? Mango 12 here, and we are kicking off the Uncanny Avengers issue 1, which is part of the all new, all different Marvel comic series. And you guys are probably like, whoa, what the heck, Rango is reviewing an Avengers comic? Well, yes, mainly because this features our 616 Spider-Man. You know, like he's got the new costume, he's got Parker Industries and all of that awesome stuff. So he's part of this Avengers. So that is why I'm reviewing this comic and this series. Now, the cover of this comic actually links to the back of the comic. So if I spread the comic out like this, then that is what the cover actually looks like. And as you can see, it's Spider-Man swinging, we've got old Captain America and all of that awesome stuff, and as you can see, Deadpool is in there as well. Now, before we kick this off and jump into this review, I just want to tell you guys that I will be reviewing other series like the all new, all different Avengers, which features Miles Morales and Nova and some other characters. So I will also be reviewing that when that releases in the coming weeks, along with many other Spider-Man series and comic reviews and everything like that. But without further ado, guys, let's jump into this Uncanny Avengers issue 1. So the issue opens up with us being introduced to this old guy, and honestly, I don't know whether he's a character that we've already seen in comics or whether he's just a brand new character. But basically, we get introduced to him and he's got cancer, he's going through all these things, and he thinks death is just around the corner. And in a way, it kind of is. But when he comes out on the other side, he's got these amazing powers. And we also discover that this guy wasn't the only person it happened to. Now, if I'm correct, or at least I hope I am, doesn't this guy become part of the Inhumans or something along those lines, or at least they categorize themselves as Inhuman because of what's happened to them? One thing that I love about the beginning of this comic is it feels like a new age, it feels like a new time. It feels like the end of the old and the beginning of the new, and it definitely puts that point across. And I think that's actually kind of reminiscing what this entire comic is about, because the reason this is called Uncanny Avengers is because the original Captain America, Steve Rogers, brings together people from Avengers and people from the X-Men and teams them up to show that pretty much mutants can work together alongside humans. Now, I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of that guy, but now we're thrown over to 8 months later, and I absolutely love the opening to the Avengers. Just how Deadpool is shouting Avengers Assemble, and then you've got Spider-Man in the background like, dude, we are already assembled, you do not need to keep saying that. And I just love it. So right off the bat, we already get a feeling of what the humor is going to be like in this comic, especially with Deadpool and Spider-Man together. That's going to be a constant entertainment for us all. And as you've noticed, yes, it is the Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man comics, the Spider-Man who owns Parker Industries. And we already know from his comics that he's got some pretty good jokes up his sleeve. So as you can see, the team are going up against an Adaptoid that can take on pretty much the powers of anyone that it touches. Very similar to that DC villain that goes up against the Justice League in the Justice League Unlimited TV series. I can't remember his name right now, but it was pretty awesome. I have to say that so far I am really loving the art style. It's almost like each character has its own personal art style, which I really like. And Deadpool comes up with this amazing idea to allow this Adaptoid to absorb his power, and it actually takes on Deadpool's cancer. Now, the reckless part about that was that what happens if it didn't take that part of him on? What happens if it took on his regenerative abilities? Then this guy would be absolutely impossible to kill, but Deadpool did it anyway. Now, we all know what Spider-Man thinks of reckless actions, especially when it puts others in danger, and Spider-Man refuses to be a part of the Uncanny Avengers team if Deadpool is on it. So as long as Deadpool is on that team, Spider-Man will not be on it with him. One thing that I thought was really interesting was when Spider-Man mentioned that Captain America might have been taken over by a Skrull. Now, in case you guys don't know what Skrulls are, they are basically alien life forms that can shapeshift into any character they want. And I think that was a little bit of a reference to the Civil War Secret Wars tie-in, because the Skrulls were actually featured in that series, and you can check my reviews out by clicking the top right corner of the screen and let me know what you think of those. The next objective that the Uncanny Avengers have to tackle now is speaking to the press, speaking to the public, because they pretty much have to show that mutants and Avengers and humans can coexist, can work with each other without having to fight each other and all of that crazy stuff. And I feel like Captain America is like the father of this group, you know, holding them together, making sure they stay in line with each other, and he's really looking after these guys. Now, Johnny Storm mentions here that Sue and Reed Richards have died. So is that like a little spoiler to the ending of the Secret Wars series? Because the final issue to Secret Wars hasn't released yet, so we don't know how Secret Wars ends, and we don't know how all these universes get put back together. So is that a spoiler? Do Reed Richards and Sue actually die at the end of Secret Wars? We'll obviously have to wait and find out, but I definitely hope that's not a spoiler, because, well, I'd be pretty depressed if it was. So as we move on throughout the issue, you can see that Rogue didn't really set a good example for the press, and they didn't really get the headline they wanted, but she is also very, very not liking Deadpool, and she more or less sides with Spider-Man on that fact. Now, usually Captain America would probably go after Spider-Man, you know, like try to convince him to stay on the team, But if he's got to choose between Deadpool and Spider-Man, he's choosing Deadpool because he trusts Deadpool more, or at least on the same level anyway. I kind of get this feeling that Deadpool is a little bit of a kid, you know, like he's very childish. Obviously, he's got that Deadpool sense of humor about him, but everyone's talking about him as if he's like some kid that he doesn't know what he's doing, that he's just kind of annoying everybody. And obviously, it's the lack of responsibility that Deadpool kind of has over his situations. I mean, he just threw his arm on there, allowing that Adaptoid to absorb his cancer, not even thinking about if he absorbed his regenerative ability as well. So I think that's what the talking point is about him mainly. But either way, it was awesome, so I'm not complaining. We also saw Rogue back there going through some kind of skin condition, so I think that's probably going to get brought up with the team finding out later on in the series. Unless they already know about it, but it seemed like she didn't, I'm not sure. Now turning the page on over to Jericho, who's talking to this ghost down in the speakeasy underneath the theatre of where the Avengers are situated. And it's pretty much like he's the only one that can see this ghost, mainly because he was killed down there, and it doesn't seem too much of a bother. But we might be seeing that ghost character again later in the future of the series. But it seemed like a really good conversation they were having, and I would be happy to see that character again. I don't know why, but I'm not a huge fan of the old Steve Rogers Captain America. There's just something about him that seems a little bit dated towards, you know, back when he was younger. So hopefully he'll like regain his youth sometime in the future, hopefully. Now as you can see on screen, Quicksilver is taking a few personal days, and it seems that he's taking a few girls on some dates, which I think is pretty awesome because he's actually taking time off work saving the world to take some girls out. Kind of reminds me of Johnny Storm. We also can't forget that Quicksilver has now discovered that Magneto is not in fact his father, even though that it was believed for years that he was. But he's pretty much making the most of life right now because of that fact that he's discovered. Somehow, almost immediately, whilst on this date slash not date, Synapse, or should I say Emily, actually flips out into being unconscious because this bird flew near her. And then we go on over to an hour later in Boston, where the team is being assembled, and Boston looks like it's been taken over by an infectious disease. Something I feel like this comic is lacking is the presence of Deadpool. Like, whenever Deadpool is on the pages, you really feel the sense of humor flow through the pages and out of the comic into your face. But so far, we've only seen him like maybe 2 or 3 times in this comic, and I really feel like he should be in it a little bit more. But then again, this is the first issue, so they're trying to probably introduce the characters in the first issue, and then later on, we'll have more characters on the pages for longer. One thing that I do have to point out is that in my personal opinion, I really like this Johnny Storm compared to the ones in the past. The Johnny Storm in this Uncanny Avengers really seems to be likeable. Like, he's not obnoxious, or he's not too obnoxious anyway. And obviously, this Johnny Storm is most likely the 616 Johnny Storm. I don't know why, but I've never noticed him quite like this before. And I absolutely love how he helps Quicksilver here. And Quicksilver says something like, "I didn't need the help. We're not here to save each other. We're here to save the civilians." And Johnny Storm just whispers to himself, "I miss my old team." I thought that was awesome, just how he throws that in there. And it seems like there's a hell of a lot going on around the city right now in the matter of an hour or hours. And the way the city has actually become like this is because they start off as pretty little flowers, and within an hour they actually turn into monstrous creatures and end up looking like Black Panthers. Now the worst part is that these little Black Panther things are the babies. So imagine what the full grown adults are going to be like. They're going to be crazy. Speaking of crazy, we flip on over the page to the final 2 pages of this comic, and I don't know why, but what is actually going on in the police officer's mind to approach someone in a dark cape sat on what looks to be scary legs and walk up to him and ask him to evacuate the area? So as it reveals himself, it seems that this guy is the villain of the situation, and he's called the Shredded Man, and I have never heard of him in my entire life. Maybe you guys have. Maybe you guys can fill me in on some information about that. But that is the end of the issue, and it seems we're going to be dealing with him in the next issue very soon. So as I said at the beginning of the video, it's pretty strange for me to be reviewing an Uncanny Avengers comic. So the reason for this was because 616 Spider-Man is in it, and I'm actually reviewing this issue to see if you guys liked it or not, because the issue actually has to be interesting and good for me to continue reviewing it, because really I only review comics that I'm interested in. And right now it's kind of interesting. I think Deadpool is one of the main characters of why I'm reviewing this besides Spider-Man. So what I mean is the time taken to review this issue could have been spent reviewing an Ultimate Spider-Man comic or reviewing an even better comic. But let me know what you guys thought and whether you want me to keep reviewing it, and we'll go from there. So guys, I'm going to be giving this issue a 7 out of 10. Obviously I love Deadpool's humour and I love the interaction with Spider-Man and all of that. But after that it got a little bit boring. Like, it didn't really seem too major, especially when, to me, this random villain just comes into it. I'm not too sure. It just seemed like this guy randomly came in and said, yeah, I'm taking over this city, and that's that. Almost like the villain at the end of the Incredibles movie. I don't know, kind of a little bit random, but what did you guys think? Let me know it in the comment section below. Go to the links in the description to follow me on Twitter and Facebook for all the latest in comic book news and updates. And don't forget to go to my Instagram to see what I'm doing in my free time when I'm not editing these videos. And last but not least, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button for more, and I will see you all later.